Hey guys, welcome back to Heart Breathings. We are into Preptober, meaning that we are all planning our novels that we're going to write for NaNoWriMo. And even if you're here and you're thinking, I am not going to do Nano, it is not for me, this video might still be helpful for you because we're going to talk about how to choose between all of your ideas and how to stick with that idea once you've picked it. So let's get started. So earlier this year, I started a video series called the Great Ideas Series, where we talked all about how to brainstorm a lot of great ideas and techniques for learning the genre and understanding genre. So if you have not watched those, I will link them down below. Because of some life circumstances, I never got to finish that series, but we are going to kind of continue some of that conversation here today. So one of the number one questions that I get asked is, once I've brainstormed all these different ideas and they all sound good to me, how do I choose which one I'm going to write? And this is a pretty specific question for NaNoWriMo as well, because you have to choose which idea you're going to write for this specific project for this specific time of year. Now, of course, when it comes to National Novel Writing Month, you're trying to write 50,000 words in just 30 days. And of course, for a lot of us, 50,000 words isn't even going to be our entire novel. It's just going to be a part of our novel. But we have to think about, what can I write quickly and what is there enough of an idea of here for me to actually see it through that fast. Sometimes you're not going to be in a rush, but you're still going to be thinking about, which idea do I choose? So this is something even I come across, because although I have written more than 25 novels, I am about to write for Nano the final book in my series that I've been writing for 11 years now. I've already been thinking, what's that next big series so I can start working on the world building? And coming up with the perfect idea can be really stressful. So I have some tips for you on how to narrow things down, how to pick out which idea you're going to write for Nano, but for any time, like for your first publishing, for all of that, these tips are going to fall right in line with that. And then I'm going to briefly go over some tips on how you stick with your idea once you've chosen and committed to one. So one of the main things that might be holding you back is this idea of FOMO, of if I choose one way, I am cutting off all other possibilities. And what if one of those other ideas was the one that was going to break out, or the one that was going to be my big thing? And that is really what holds us back. Sometimes what we do, raise your hand if you're feeling this in the comments. Sometimes what we do is we spend so much time waffling. We'll start an idea, it'll get hard. Then we're like, but I had this other really great idea. What if that one would come easier? Or what if that's a better story? Because this one really kind of sucks. And then we switch projects and then we say, okay, I'm excited. I'm writing this one for a little while. And then it gets hard and we can't figure out where it's going. And we think, maybe this is the worst thing I've ever written. What if that third idea was really the one? That was my breakout idea that's just going to flow and it's going to be better. And in fact, I've talked about this. If you take my Publish and Thrive class, you will know that one of the biggest mistakes I made in my career was constantly chasing that shiny new object. And every time I would get stuck, I would say, but what about this other idea? This could be the thing that gets my joy of writing back, or that takes off and makes better sales, or whatever. First of all, when you're trying to decide which idea, you kind of have to calm that part of your mind down. Take a little bit of time to set up your space to be calm and clean. Take out a fresh notebook. I have one right in front of me. I always have my ideas written down on notebooks or note cards, and really get into a mindset of, no matter what I choose, I am going to be able to make this a great story. And I think that once you realize that the story idea, if it's ones that you feel are good, then it doesn't really matter which one you pick, because you are going to bring the magic to whichever idea. And the other thing to understand is that no matter which idea you choose, it's going to get hard at some point. You're going to hit a roadblock at some point in the writing where you feel like, this is the worst book I've ever written. I'm no good. I'm a terrible author. This book sucks. It's going nowhere. It's out of control. Those are normal parts of the writing process for like 99.9% of us. So what you have to get past if you're trying to finish that first novel or really commit is you have to get past this idea that out of the 20 ideas that you have brainstormed, there's one idea that's going to be your best idea. You are full of thousands of amazing ideas. And yes, there are some ideas that are more high concept that are going to grab people's attention right from the blurb so much faster than others. But in the end, it's you as the artist, your imagination that is going to bring the magic to that project. So try to come into your brainstorming session and into your decision session with this idea that no matter what I choose, it's going to get hard and I'm going to feel like it sucks at some point in the process. But no matter what I choose, I am going to be able to bring my unique magic to it and make it a great novel. And as long as you can do that, you know there is no FOMO. There is no missing out. And in fact, the faster you decide on one idea and just move forward with it, the more time you'll have to write that second and third idea later. So if you spend months going between projects and never finishing anything, then you've just basically wasted a ton of time. But if you pick one project, even if it wasn't your like bestseller idea, and you actually saw it through and you finished it, you would learn and grow so much more in your ability as a writer that when you go back to that next idea that you feel like maybe this is a better idea, it's going to be that much better of a book. So you can't make a mistake in which you choose. The only mistake you can make is not choosing or not finishing. That's it. You got to choose, make a decision, and put your magic into it. And stop worrying about making the wrong decision. Okay, Sarah, thanks for the pep talk, but what are some actual practical tips for how I choose between all these ideas? Here we go. Number one, know your goal and the outcome you're trying to reach. Because as we approach NaNoWriMo, or as you approach any book that you're about to write, it's important to know what your intention with this book is. So if you're thinking, okay, I want to write a book that's going to become my next big series, and I know I want to find something that's really long, then as you examine these different ideas, you have to think about which idea has the most potential to become a big world, a big series. Where can I imagine lots of spin-offs, lots of characters, lots of conflict? Or you might be thinking, I'm looking for a really good idea that's going to be a standalone, that I can write it in one thing, sum it up, the world's not so big that I can't just finish it out in 50 or 60,000 words. That's two totally different ways of looking at your ideas. Another possibility is one person might be looking at their ideas thinking, okay, I want to find the idea that is the most publishable. Like, this is going to be my first published novel, and I want it to be the thing that I feel like will be my best introduction to the reader world, that I want to put my best foot forward. But somebody else might be thinking, I don't know that I'm ever going to publish this. This is just super for fun, and I just want to play around. Some of you might be coming at this from, I've been working on this other series for a long time and I'm super burned out. So I want to pick the best idea that I'm going to have fun with. Whereas some people might be thinking, I have to choose the idea that I'm going to be able to write in 30 days and make some money on by Christmas. So whatever your goal is going to influence which idea is the best idea for you. So the first thing you do is you sit down and you figure out what's your goal. Do you want this to become a series? Is it already the next book in a series? Do you want to publish this someday? In which case you need to start thinking about, is this the genre I plan to publish long term? Is this just something that you want to have fun with? Write down your thoughts on what your goal or your outcome or your main reason for writing this book is. That's going to help to guide your decision. So then, of course, the natural step number 2 is to go through your brainstormed list of ideas and eliminate anything that doesn't fall in line with that goal. So for example, you pull out, you're looking for something that's a standalone. You have 5 ideas that obviously can become this huge world. There's all this magic systems and vampires and werewolves and factions, and it's this big world. You can just cross those off because you're like, I'll write those later. I'm looking for a standalone idea. Then you find this one thing that's like a mystery, you know, it can be wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow, and maybe there's 2 different ideas that are like that. Now you can highlight those and say, okay, these are the 2 ideas that fit with my particular goal. Or for example, you might be saying, okay, I've got 10 ideas, but I want to publish this. And I know that what I want to publish, what I want to be known for in the beginning is writing urban fantasy. So you can just go through all those ideas, and anything that isn't an urban fantasy genre idea, say there was a contemporary romance, there's a mystery, there's a science fiction, just cross those out and say, okay, I'm starting with the urban fantasy ideas. But the first thing you can do is eliminate. And of course, I didn't say this before, but you need to have your brainstormed list. So again, if you haven't watched those previous videos from earlier this year, I will link them down below. But brainstorm that big list, then know your goal, and then start eliminating based on that goal. And if you're like, I don't know, Sarah, I don't know what my goal is, then start the process of elimination in this way, which is step number 3. Go through each idea and test your gut feeling about it. So one way to do this is to put all your ideas, like a couple of words about each idea, and put it on a note card or a small slip of paper, fold it up, put it in a hat or a cup, mix them all up, reach your hand in, open up the idea. Girl lost in space. Okay, what's your immediate reaction? Because you don't know which idea you're going to open up. What's your immediate reaction? Do you get butterflies in your stomach? Is there a part of you that like your body physically goes like, oh, that's going to be a really tough one, or I don't really get excited about that? Or do you read those words like the tarot witches and go, oh, I love that idea. That's going to be a really good one. And feel your shoulders pull back, chills on your arms, and you think, yes, that is a really good one. I actually have an idea for a group of sisters that are tarot witches. And the second I said that, my arms erupted into goosebumps. So maybe that's a good test for me of what's coming next as my big series. Find some way to surprise yourself with which idea you're looking at, and just judge your immediate reaction to it. It could be that your husband or your best friend is sitting here with a notebook and they say, randomly they say, okay, what about the idea of the 2 werewolf brothers? How do you feel? And just immediately be like, werewolf brothers. Really sit with it and think, how does that feel? Can you see that playing across your mind like a movie screen? Do you get excited? Are there lots of ideas that come up? If so, then, highlight it as this is a possibility, or put it over in the possible pile. Anything that you opened up or that you looked at that you thought, I don't really want to write that. Maybe it made your list because somebody else told you would be really good at this, or maybe it made your list because somebody was like, oh, this genre is really hot on Amazon right now. You should totally write that. But if you open up the surprise idea and you go, ugh, I don't want to write that, don't write it. You will only be hurting yourself in the long run and wasting precious time of your life. This is, of course, my opinion, so you can disregard it if you want to, but I really and truly believe that if you can find that place between a story that you really want to write, that you're excited to write, and a story that people are really going to be excited to read, that like Venn diagram moment is the best place for you to be writing your stories. So at this point, now that you've followed those 3 steps, then you should hopefully have just 2 or 3 ideas left. If you still have more than 2 or 3 ideas at this stage of the process, then go back toward the beginning, because the next phase is going to be something that is quite time consuming. So I would just do it again. So let's say if you have 5 ideas left, then put them all in a bowl, open them up, rate them 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 as to your excitement, and then pick out the 3 ideas that feel the best, that align with your goal for what you're going to do with this book the most. Step number 4 is to daydream about the story. And what I mean is pulling out a journal or opening up a Word document or something like that and just writing everything you know. So let's say you have 2 great ideas left after the brainstorming and all of those other sessions. So take idea number 1 and give yourself like a 30-minute timer on the clock and just write out literally everything you can imagine about the story. Who's the main character? What's her backstory? What's the world like? Is there magic in this world? Is there romance? Is there a sexy vampire? What is going on in this world? Also, what can you imagine of the conflict? Okay, so she's got this father who's kept her in this castle, and we're going to have him come and try to rescue her, but he ends up being this or whatever, like anything. It doesn't have to actually be your story. It doesn't even need to be super well thought out. But what we're looking at is how much does your imagination want to go to that place? And if you think, oh, I had this really great idea about a girl who grew up in space, but she's an orphan. Okay, that's a cool idea. It gets you excited. But then you sit down with your open Word document and you're just like twiddling your thumbs. You're like, okay, so she's a girl in space. Who is she? I don't know. What happens to her? What's the conflict of this story? And you just, your brain is coming up with nothing, then maybe this isn't the right idea for this particular project. Maybe that idea needs more time to marinate. But on the other hand, you pull up this idea about a girl who's trapped in a castle in a fantasy world, and you say, okay, I've got all this stuff, and you end up having, like, in 30 minutes, you have a full page of notes. That, ding, 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 is your best choice for NaNoWriMo, as long as it lines up with that original goal. Because in that example, I've got one sci-fi idea and one fantasy idea. So if you really want to be a sci-fi author, then you shouldn't have had the fantasy on your list in the first place. Some of the questions that I ask myself during this daydream journaling session is, how much do I know? What's the real conflict? Who's the villain, or what's keeping these people apart? What's the main conflict of the story? What are the main characters, and what are their backstories? How does the story end? Like, what's the main storyline or story question? And then how does it end? What's going to happen at the end of this? You don't have to be able to answer all those questions, but that might be something that sparks your imagination and gets you writing. Another cool thing that you could do if you aren't into the like writing down all your ideas is you could make a secret Pinterest board, and you could say, okay, here's idea number 1's board, and here's idea number 2 board. And I'm going to take 30 minutes and pin all the images that I can imagine about this world and these characters onto Pinterest board number 1, and then give yourself 30 minutes with Pinterest board number 2, and then see which story calls to you. You can put them up, grab 2 different browsers and pull them up beside each other and just think, which one am I most excited about? Which one had more images? Which one lives more vibrantly in my mind? That is the story you should write for Nano. If at this point you still do not have a choice, hopefully you've narrowed it down to at least 2 ideas and no more than 2. At this point, it can be a good idea to go to outside people. So going to your critique partner, somebody in our Word Sprints group, somebody here in the comments, your husband, your best friend, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is in your life that you know knows you and what your publishing goals are and your writing goals, or what you find fun, and run those ideas by them. And watch their expressions, especially if you've never talked about this idea before with them. Watch their expressions. And I have done this once with my sister-in-law. My sister and her wife Gina are both very like adamant readers. They love to read, they love to watch movies, they love to consume different types of fiction. And so going to Gina, who knows me but doesn't know me as well as my sister Chris, and being able to say, what about this idea? And I can watch her and she'll be like, yeah, I mean, it's personal. Maybe that's not her thing. But there are a couple ideas that I've run by her that she's been like, oh, I have to read that. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing idea. And that has helped me make decisions in the past about which would be the best short story to write, which thing has the most excitement for the most people. So I might run it by Gina, and then I also run it by George, my husband, or I also run it by my cousin Kimberly. But I wouldn't run it by my best friend Kelly because she is not much of a reader and she wouldn't know. But I might run it by her daughter, who is an avid reader. So think about who is on your team that you can read to, that you can say, that you can call them up and say, what do you think of these 2 ideas? Which one do you like best? And sometimes, not always, sometimes you're going to get a very clear reaction from multiple people that, wow, that really sounds cool. Then you know you've tapped into some kind of universal fantasy, as Theodora Taylor might say, which I will actually link that book down below because it is amazing, or into some type of high concept premise. So definitely be looking for that. That can help you like final way to decide. At the end of all of those steps, if you still have 2 ideas lingering and they both seem equal, then just know you don't want to waste any more time trying to decide. They're both equally amazing, equally as exciting. They both fit the bill. You cannot make a mistake. So just pick a random number, roll a die, whatever you need to do, but choose one of the ideas and make a firm decision. And this is where we tie into how do you stick with that idea, is you have to make a commitment and you say, this is the one I'm writing, no more waffling, this is the one. And even when it gets hard, even when it feels like it's a terrible idea, I'm messing it up, I'm not bringing what I need to the page, I'm the worst writer ever, whatever thoughts may come up, this is the commitment that I have made, and I am going to finish this novel. And that comes from your heart. But once you get through all those steps, hopefully you have a novel that you're excited about and that you are going to write really well for NaNoWriMo. Okay, 5 quick tips on how to avoid shiny object syndrome. And do due to time, I'm not going to go super deep into these. So if you guys want a video like fully dedicated to fleshing out these ideas, please let me know in the comments. And if you've been enjoying this content, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and subscribe. So the first thing is exactly what I was just talking about. It has to be a decision. So shiny object syndrome and knowing there's other possibilities out there for us is only an option if we're not fully committed to the story that we want to write. And this is really important. It comes from your own mind and your own decision that regardless of how hard this story is or how much it doesn't seem to be coming together, this is the story I committed to, and I am going to finish it for NaNoWriMo. Once Nano is over, if you really hated this idea and it just wasn't for you, then move on to the next. But you are the only one who knows if you are somebody who has been consistently starting and not finishing ideas for a really, really long time. And I know that some of you are like, why is she attacking me like this? But there are so many writers who do this, that we get into a story and then we see that it's not coming together. And out of fear, we jump to something fresher, or we jump to something that feels more exciting. And then eventually that idea also turns to dust and we're ready for something new. But if you want to be a professional writer, you've got to stick to something. You have to find your voice, and it's fine to explore and to take your time with things and to learn your process. That's awesome. And it may take you several stories. I wrote like 4 or 5 different books and stops and starts before I landed on something that really worked for me. But then once I found it, I committed to it. So eventually you're going to have to commit, as scary as that seems. Another practical tip for avoiding the shiny object syndrome, especially in the middle of Nano when you do not have time to really indulge, is to set that timer and say, I'm going to give myself 1 hour or 30 minutes or whatever time you have. And once I hit my word count goal for the day on the project I'm committed to, I'm going to give myself 1 hour to indulge in this shiny new idea that's really just grabbed me really and hooked me in. And I'm going to take a stack of note cards and write out every idea I can think of and really indulge yourself in it. And actually, I say note cards, but it's even better if you can open like a Google Doc or a Word doc so that it's digitally there and you don't have to go searching for it later and you're like a year from now when you get a chance to finally write that, or you're looking for ideas for next year's Nano. Go ahead and open up a Word doc and have a folder in your Google Drive folder or your Dropbox that is specifically for these shiny object ideas, and just write it all down, everything that's in your head, and then say to it, thank you so much for this amazing idea. I will come back to you another time. That way you've gotten it out of your system. You've got the ideas stored for later so you don't lose it, but you're putting it behind. Now, I will caveat this by saying this doesn't work for everybody, because for some people, indulging in the actual like getting excited and writing it all down just gets you more excited for it and convinces you more that this is the idea I should have written. So know thyself, because if you know that that's just going to make you crazy and make you more excited about that idea, then don't do this step. But if you think that writing it down is going to kind of get it off your plate, like, whew, okay, I got that out of me, I will look at that later, then do it. 9 times out of 10, when this shiny object is coming at you and you start to feel the pull of something new and exciting, the plot bunnies, the other things, it's because your current story just got hard. And I know I've talked about this several times throughout this video, but it is so important because this is when we all think this is when we should jump ship and write something new, is because the idea that we're working on got hard. We hit a roadblock. We aren't sure where it goes. So really this tip is more about how do you get back into and stick with this story, because the siren song of that new idea, you have to understand that eventually that new idea is also going to get hard. It's inevitable. All books eventually, I won't say all, but most books eventually hit a point where we think we're crap and we're not going to pull it through and it's going to be terrible. You have to learn to push through those hard times. So here's a few tips on how to do that. So when you start to feel like it's stuck and this isn't going anywhere and I don't want to write this story anymore, here's some things you can do. You can skip ahead to another scene. Now, again, every writer is different, so some people just can't do this, but I love to do this. If I'm stuck over here, I can say, well, I don't know where this goes, but I do know that later in this book, Harper and Jackson are going to have this other conversation. So I will skip ahead to this other thing. And sometimes while I'm writing that, it'll unlock some ideas about what's supposed to happen leading up to that scene. Or I'll go to the end and I'll be like, okay, I don't know what's happening in this muddy, murky middle, but I can write the ending. And again, sometimes skipping ahead will unlock what needs to happen sooner or earlier in the story. So skip ahead if you can. If you can't, I understand, but don't knock it till you try it. Another thing that you can do is to actually talk it out. So sometimes when we're caught in our heads and we're trying to figure it out, it's very difficult to just do it in silence and just think it through. So a lot of times what helps is going to someone that you trust and saying, hey, can we just talk through this? A lot of times I will do this with my friend Jen or with my husband George, and I'll just say, well, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, and I'll throw out lots of ideas. And I don't actually need them most of the time to say anything. Or sometimes George just gives me really, really bad ideas that I'm like, no, 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 no. But just talking through it without having to just keep it all in my head and try to untangle all my thoughts can get me through a rough spot. And I may not be able to see the whole book, but I can see what's next in front of me. And I will go back and I will write that, and then I'll come back and talk it through. But talking it through with someone can be super helpful to get you through the hard times. Fill the well too. Sometimes this idea that you have seems hard just because you're getting burned out. And this is particularly dangerous during NaNoWriMo when we're trying to write potentially for hours every single day. So maybe if you're really feeling like it's hard and you're like, I don't want to write this one anymore, that other idea was so much better, just say, okay, I'm going to take the afternoon off and I'm going to go get in the pool, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm just going to binge watch some Netflix and then come back to it tomorrow with fresh energy. And sometimes you'll be like, now it's flowing. Here we go. So don't be fast to give up on your ideas. Sometimes what you need is a little bit of a break and some time to fill the well. Later in this month, we are going to go over what's in your PREPTOBER planner, which is a creativity toolbox. And that is something you can really turn to. So I will talk about that later in the month. If you have not picked up your free PREPTOBER planner, there's a link to it down below. You just need to sign up for my mailing list, and I will see you guys over there. Another tip when you start to feel like you don't want to stick with the story and you want to switch is to go back to the reason why you loved this story. So if you created that Pinterest board, or if you wrote down or really thought about why you love this story or what your goals are as a published author, that just recentering yourself on your goals and your vision can be enough to say, okay, I'm going to stick with this. You're right. It's kind of like a pep talk in the locker room before you go out to a football game. It's that moment of like, okay, I'm going to get myself excited again for this story. And another thing you can actually do other than like a vision board or a Pinterest board is you can just sit down and journal. And this can count as part of your nano word count, is the journaling too, like your thoughts. It doesn't all have to be story, by the way. So it can be your thoughts on why this story was so exciting and what you think needs to happen. And sometimes that journaling of getting yourself back into the story and excited for it again is all you need to pick it back up and get going again on your story. So those are my tips on how to choose between your ideas and how to stick to it once you have chosen your idea. I know you're going to do a great job. If you guys want to chat it out, we also have a word sprint group. You are welcome to come join it and help get some advice and talk through your story ideas there with fellow writers. I will link that group down below. We always have like special live events. We have live sprints going on every single day. So come join us over there if you'd like to. Once again, don't forget to go get your free PREPTOBER planner. We will have lots of other great videos coming up. I have the notebook challenge coming up this weekend. Next week's video is going to be all about how to take that idea and develop it into a novel. So I hope that you're subscribed. Please hit the thumbs up button, the like button, so that I know you enjoyed this video. Comment down below and let me know what idea you're planning to write for NaNoWriMo, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.